Hey guys, welcome to another quick tutorial. I think this is week 6, if I'm correct. Um, we're going to talk about masking today. We're also going to talk about some different type of track mats and layer properties. So the big thing I want to get across today is how to mask out different things. I'm just going to run through doing a quick example. I'm going to animate this Ubuntu logo. I don't know what Ubuntu is. I just found it. I thought it was a cool logo, so I thought we would snag it. I just downloaded a transparent PNG off of Google. This is as big as it gets, so if I scale it above this, it's going to get nice and gross. So I want to keep it at this size. But let's make a quick, cool little thing um, for this logo. If I turn my transparency off, this is black. So I'm going to start off by making a background here. So I'm going to do new, solid, name it background, put it at the bottom. I'm going to, let's do a gradient, 4-color gradient on it. Sometimes I do ramps, sometimes I do 4-color gradients. I'm going to pull colors from these, each spot of this Ubuntu logo. And I'm just gonna kind of fade it. So you have opacity. I set all these. I can bring my opacity back down, kind of fade them all together. I think that does it white though. So let's do this. I'm gonna bring these closer to white from where they're at. See if that does what I want it to do. It's kind of cool. The pink is kind of rough. Good enough. Okay, whatever. So now I have kind of a gradient background. So I just pulled these. I dropped on these colors, and then I just pulled them closer to a white, so they're all kind of uniform. But they're all pulling from the colors of this logo, which is kind of cool. So, okay, I'm gonna lock this background. So when I click on here, I don't select anything. That way, I can just click on here and select. So masking works a couple different ways. If you remember with shape layers when we did this, this tool creates shapes. If you select one of these, like the rectangle tool, and I don't have anything selected down here, if I click and drag, it'll create a new shape layer rectangle. If I have an item selected down here, rather than making a shape layer, it'll mask that layer. So it'll create a mask. You can see it hides and shows this layer depending on how I draw it. So if you want to create a rectangle mask, rounded rectangle mask, ellipse mask, polygon mask, star mask, that's a way to do it up here. Alternatively, you can use the pen tool. Same thing. If we didn't have anything selected and we use the pen tool, it's going to draw a shape, right? If you remember that, I'll undo that. If I have this selected, I'm going to delete that shape layer. If I have my logo selected and I draw a mask, or use my pen tool, it'll also mask that. So that's the difference between having a layer selected, not having a layer selected, what that does between shape layers and masks. So let's start this out. I want to pull apart this logo so I can animate these items independently. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out this Ubuntu text. I don't know what font that is. I would be most well served by just figuring out the font and typing it in myself. But that doesn't really add much to here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to get my rectangle tool. You could also use a pen tool to draw around it. I'm just going to mask this Ubuntu out. Okay. And I'm just going to name this Ubuntu text. And you can see it creates a mask down here. If I arrow this down, we can see the properties of a mask when we create one. We have path, which is fully animatable. So that's these 4 points. It also lets us know that it's a straight point to point. There's no Bezier curves. You can fully animate this path as well. So if I want this path to move over time, I would animate this mask path here. We have feather. So if I adjust this feather, you can see it feathers the edges of this mask. I have opacity, which is pretty obvious, and I have expansion. So if I need to increase or decrease my path, my outlined mask, then that's how I would do it. Also, you have add, subtract. It automatically sets it to add. If I set it to subtract, it'll cut it out rather than keep it. Just inverts that selection. So I've got my text here, so I know that this layer is good. I could drag down another version of it, or I could just, to start cutting out the actual logo, I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to hit M to bring up my mask, and I'm just going to delete it. So now if I hide my previous selection, now I have a clean copy of it, right? Everything's in the same exact place, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to kind of zoom in here If you hit spacebar and hold it, you bring up your little hand tool, and I can left click and drag around to move around my composition so I can get nice and close and detailed looks here. I am going to rename this Circle 1, and I'm just going to use my pen tool to create a little mask around this circle. Okay, good. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to hit M, delete the mask. I'm going to hide what I just did. And I'm going to do the same thing for circle number 2, which will be right here. So I'll create a little mask around this. Now we'll duplicate this, hit M, delete the mask, hide it. This is going to be the same process for this whole thing. Draw a mask around this other circle. Good. It automatically names it circle 3. I'm going to duplicate it, hit M, delete the mask, hide that circle 3. I'm going to name this, I don't know, line 1. I don't know what that is. It's like a weird curved line. Grab my pen tool, cut out this guy. Sometimes when you guys are working with the pen tool, I've noticed, I'm going to delete this, do the same thing, hit M, delete the mask, and hide the line 1. Sometimes if you guys grab the pen tool, with this Roto Bezier selection, Bezier, I don't know how to say it, it'll automatically curve your pen tool. See how it's automatically curving it like this? Which I don't like. It acts like it knows what you want to do, and so it helps you skip a step. So if it's automatically curving and you can't get straight lines, make sure this is unchecked. And you see this when you have your pen tool selected. So if you have your selection tool selected, you're not going to see that. You have to have pen tool selected, and you'll see Roto Bezier. Okay, so we got line 2. That's what we want to do. Which I don't remember what line 1 I did. Okay, so there's line 1. This will be line 2 right here. So we'll cut this guy out. Okay, good job. We'll duplicate, we'll hide it, we'll hit M to bring up mask. If you want to see the mask properties when you bring it up, instead of hitting M once, you hit it twice, and that'll bring up all your options, right? I just want to see the mask, and I want to delete it. And I'll do another one for my third yellow line. Okay, cool. So now we got all 3. I will show all these layers now. So now we have each of these independently. We can move them around, which is kind of fun. Oops, which is kind of fun. Something I should have done before I started was setting my anchor point on this. You can see my anchor point's all the way over here, which is not where I want it. I want it to be right in the center of here in case I'm doing any rotation or anything like that. So I should have done that before I started, but I messed up. So let's just reset these back. These aren't going to be perfect, but if I was going to do this as a real animation for a client or something, I had to go back and redo this. But since it's just for training purposes, I can get away with just manually dragging these over. So this probably won't be 100% perfect while I'm animating this, but whatever, we'll get there. All right, is that everything? I think I got them all. Oh, one more. Okay, so I'm just dragging the anchor point because if let's say I wanted to rotate this circle, right? I want it to rotate around that anchor point. Before it was over here, so it would have rotated based off of this anchor point. Okay, so I've got my Ubuntu. This text, I can change the color of this since I've cut this out. If I throw a fill on this, I can make this whatever color I want, which is kind of fun. I don't really like the dark black, so I'm going to make it a little bit more gray. I think that looks better. Or I could do I could just pull from this orange, which is fine too. It's whatever we want. What looks best? Let's do red. That's fine. Okay, so we've got our logo. We've got this all cut out. So now let's animate it, right? Let's do this. Let's toggle my switches so I can see. I'm going to turn on motion blur. We'll kick motion blur on for all these layers. I don't need it on my background. I'm also going to enable them all for 3D. And I'll just do something really basic. I'm just going to select all these lines and circles. I'll select the position. I'll go to my ending point. I know I want them to end there. Let's also do a rotation. Probably want to do, let's see. What do we want to do? They could rotate that way if they're going to be flying in. I'm going to have them flying from behind the camera. hit U to bring up all the keyframes for these. So I've got, these are all these keyframes are the same. There's no change here. I just set my ending point is where I want it to end. I'm going to go back and pull them, get back to my starting point, pull them out in front of the camera here. Just kind of line that up so it flies through the circle. So now they'll fly in that way, and let's have them rotate a little bit. If I rotate them 40 degrees, what does that do? Kind of brings it in at an angle. Actually, I don't like this rotation. Let's get rid of my X rotation. Let's do, what would it be? A Z rotation. Do Z rotation for all of them, and I'll just set this to like 45. What will that do? I have them all selected, so it's going to set them all to 45. You can see 45, 45, 45. So now it's spinning when it comes in, but not really enough. Okay, let's do 180. See what that does. Okay. I'm going to grab all of these. I'll easy ease them, hitting F9 or function F9, depending on what computer you have. Bring my work area down and see what this looks like. Okay. So, cool. Now, just for a really basic, I mean, we could probably do this way better, but for now, I'm just going to stagger these. Actually, I want my lines to come in first, and then my circles. So, let's do this. I'm just staggering this animation so that I'll come in kind of separately. Let me zoom in here so you can get a better look. Line 1. Okay, so now when these come in, I'm going to turn this down to half so you can see this a little bit better. Now it's coming in as individual pieces, which is kind of cool. Pretty neat. Very basic. So we've got that coming in, which is cool. Bring this back down. So now let's talk about track mats. We know how to cut these out with masks. Man, when I kick this on full, it just hates its life. Wonder if this render is set up to adaptive. That would probably be why. Okay, so I got that coming in, which is cool. Let's talk about track mats. This Ubuntu text, I want to come in. I just want it to slide up like this, but I want it to be hidden underneath where it's sitting now, like right underneath it. I want it to be hidden. So a track mat is a great use for that. So the way the track mat works, if I create a new solid, I'll just make it black just so you can see it best. If I drag this right underneath this text, I'll line this up to about there. I want this to be hidden when it goes under like this, right? So the way this works is you create a solid. I'm just going to name this, oops, select this down here, name this mat. The way it works is we have to have this right above whatever text layer we're going to hide, right? So if I switch toggle my switches and modes, you see TRK MAT here. That's track mat. There's two different types of track mat. There's an alpha mat and there's a luma mat. Alpha mat just looks for any content at all. So this black box is going to see it as now a mat, essentially. A luma mat only looks at the white areas, and we'll talk about that down the road and explain why that's helpful. But so for alpha mat, essentially, if you notice, I can set a track mat for all these layers except circle 3. I can't do anything here, right? That's because when you set a track mat, it looks at the layer above it for the mat. That's why we have to put mat above Ubuntu text, because when we set this track mat here, my alpha mat, it's going to look at the mat above it. If this was up here, it would be looking at line 1, which we don't want to do. So let's bring a mat down here. If we set alpha mat, everything disappears. It even hides our mat here, right? It automatically hides it. And if you notice, Ubuntu text is gone as well. Well, if we slide it down under where that is, you can see it now. So The alpha matte shows any items that come in contact with the matte above it. So when I drag this to line it up with it, when they kind of intersect, like if I show you this, if it's in where this layer is, it shows it. If I set this to alpha inverted, that's what we're going to want, because now it hides it when it comes in contact with it, right? So I'll do my animation here. I'll set just a position keyframe. I'll go forward 20 frames. Set my ending point, go back to my starting point, just drag this down a little bit. And I'll ease it. So now, if I zoom out, we have a nice little animation, just a very basic Ubuntu bumper here. Pretty cool? Okay, so let's talk about pre-comping really fast before we get into luma matting. We talked about this a little bit in class. But now that we're starting to cut things apart like this, we're going to have a lot more layers to work with, right? We have all these layers. So an easy way to kind of compartmentalize and work forward would be to use pre-comping or pre-composing these in their own compositions. So we have Ubuntu text and our mat, and we have all of our logo stuff, right? Well, let's say I want to package this up as just one little thing so I don't have to see all this. This is all done, right? I just want to pre-compose it now. If I select all these, go up to layer and hit pre-compose, and I'll just do this as logo, it compresses it all in a comp here. If you see this little symbol, that's the symbol for these comps. It's the same symbol. So that's how you know this is a composition. If we double click this, it opens up this comp and we can see what's in here. I'm going to slide these forward. Since we're pre-composing this now, we can just set this to the beginning of the comp. So we know the beginning of this is where it comes in. Right? So pretty neat, right? The problem though with this is that let's say we want to add a camera to this. So if we add a camera, if you'll notice, if we orbit around, we lose that 3D that we had if we were within here, right? Well, the way we enable that back, if we go back to toggle switches, this switch right here will bring those 3D values through. So now if we can rotate our camera and you can see that everything's moving around with it, which is kind of fun. So if you're using a pre-comp layer and that you have 3D aspects of it, just make sure you check this to bring those along with it. Motion blur and all that stuff, that'll all come with. But just checking it for 3D, it still acts like a 2D layer if you look at that. So that's not what we want. We want those 3D values from the previous comp, which would be this. Okay? So I will do that, not necessarily because I need it. I'm going to delete my camera. But just in case we do anything, it's kind of good to do that. But now it's nice because if I have, let's say I have my logo here, if I need to move this in any way, before if I was in here and I needed to move this whole layer, I would have to go through and change each of these ending position values to scoot them over, right? It makes it kind of difficult. Well, now since it's pre-comped, I can just move this whole thing over and it's still going to come into place from where it came in, right? We may have to do some adjusting to have it still come through camera, but you know, this isn't always going to be the animation to come through camera, but it makes it really nice and easy to make little small adjustments because they're all within this pre-comp now. It also is nice because we can do cool things like reflections and shadows. All this information's in here, so if we duplicate this and we flip the scale so it's kind of like a negative 100, if we uncheck this, this is constrained proportions. If I uncheck that, I can set this to negative and keep this as positive. So this is my X value of 100% scale. My Y at negative 100 will flip this. So now if I pull this down, this will be a perfect mirror effect on this, right? We kind of talked about this in class, but a way to kind of make this look better is we can mask this out kind of halfway down like this. Hit MM to bring up our feathering, kind of feather this. I will set my opacity down to, 25% or so. And I'll throw on a blur. I'm going kind of quick, but this isn't, this is just kind of how to put the cherry on top of some of this stuff. I'll throw a fast blur on this. I'm going to rename this logo reflection. And I'm going to bring up my blurriness to, yeah, maybe 9. That looks fine. So now if you see this, it kind of adds that reflection to it. Okay, so let's do the same with Ubuntu. We have the mat here. It's already pulled up. So if we pre-comp this, Control-Shift-C will give us the pre-comp here, or layer pre-compose. We'll do Ubuntu text, hit OK. So now it's coming through. We still maintain that mat. It's all within here still, which is fine. It's also nice because if we want to move this now, we can. Before, if we wanted to move it, we would have had to move the mat as well, but now it's just this pre-comped Ubuntu text, so we can move this wherever we want, which is kind of great. But let's do the same for this. So if we copy this, I will name this Reflect. I will scale this negative 100% on the Y to flip it vertically. I'll bring this down a little bit to line it up with the other one. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mask this out about halfway, add some feathering, hit M a bunch of times to bring up that option. I will bring my opacity down. The quick key for opacity is T. So if you have a layer selected, you hit T, that'll bring up opacity. I'll set that to 25%. I will add a fast blur to it. I'll set that to like 10, which is what it was before. So now we have this nice reflected text, right? Pretty cool. Not bad. Really fast, really easy, really nice and clean. This is a really great way to pick apart a logo. I realize that if you guys are doing legitimate work, you're going to have a logo that's pre-layered for you, so you don't have to do this type of stuff. But it does come in handy if you can only find a certain icon or something like that, and you have to manually pick that apart. I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. It helps a lot to have this as a transparent PNG. If it's not, it becomes a little bit harder. I can recommend 1,000 times over trying to find transparent versions of things. If you can't, you'll have to recreate this stuff from scratch. The best way to do that is to get really good with the pen tool. I'm going to upload a separate video explaining the pen tool because, man, that's a whole beast in itself. So I'll do that next, and I'll get that uploaded for you. But for now, really, I just want you guys to know how to mask this stuff out. Some of the stuff you guys picked for homework were kind of hard to mask out with the pen tool. They didn't have these kind of spaces in between where you can easily cut out. So I feel for you. Interested to see how well that goes for you guys, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Let's talk about Luma Mat really quick. Here's another one for Dropbox I did that was similar. I showed this in class, but it's kind of a similar effect. There's a track mat up here when this hides underneath this. Really quick too, another thing that we chatted about, I'm going to get rid of these reflections really fast. And I want to show you guys, I'm going to dive in here. I'm going to get rid of this mat. I'm going to kind of undo some of my work here. So I just have my Ubuntu text. And I want to get rid of my animation. I just want this to chill here. So if I have, so I just got rid of my Ubuntu animation. Let's say I wanted this to slide out from this logo after it came up. I would use, I'm going to just grab this. I'm going to undo my pre-comp here. I'm just going to add this layer back in. So I'm undoing that pre-comp. I just drug that layer out of there. So now I just have my layer. It's not pre-comped anymore. I'm going to set my anchor point just because it's annoying me. Okay, so how would we do that? We want this to slide from behind it, and when it's behind it, I want it to be completely hidden. So another great use for a track mat. So let's do this. Let's create a new solid. We need to create our mat around this logo, right? So I'm just going to keep my my new black solid right in the middle here. That's fine. I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to use this to draw with my pen tool, right? So we need to draw along the outside of this to create our mask, right? Essentially, we're going to come straight down and kind of trace around this, and we want this whole side to be masked out. or have our track mat over here. So when this goes, it knows to hide it. So let's do that. I'm going to start, we'll just start down here. Oops, I hit space. So again, I'll rename this mat. I'll put this on top of my Ubuntu text because I want my text to pull from mat. When I set my track mat, it's going to look at the layer right above it, so I need to make sure my mat is there. With my mat selected, I'm going to grab my pen tool and start drawing. The pen tool, man, it takes a little bit to master. So I'm going to do it as I know how, and then if it doesn't make sense, take a look at the pen tool tutorial, and hopefully you get a little bit better with it. So I'm just going to kind of draw this out as I see fit. Oops, as I mess it up. And we really only need as high as this top part's going to go, right? So go around this. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to slide rather quickly. Okay, so I've traced around this outer edge, right? Now we just need to close this off. So if I unhide this, actually I'll keep it. Pen tools, by the way, if you click on the points, like if I click on this point here, it'll continue from this point. So if I want to continue from this, I just click on this point, and then when I draw out, it'll come from here. So I have that selected. I'm just going to finish this off from top to bottom, and then show that again. Okay, so here's the mask I just created. Just right around the edge of this. You can see it's not perfect, but for all intents and purposes, you know, it's not a big deal. If I wanted to, I can open up my math expansion here, and I could adjust it a little bit if I want to shrink it down. It's not super duper important, but you know, whatever floats your boat. So I've got my mask. I'll take my Ubuntu text. I will set alpha inverted mat as my track mat. So when it goes behind it, now it's hidden. You can see if I zoom in here, it's not perfect. So I may have to go back, grab this guy, kind of adjust these points just a tad here. Just to kind of cover up some of this stuff that's obviously wrong. Okay, that looks good. Good enough. You're not going to see it when it's zoomed out like this. So now let's animate my text. I will set my ending point next to it, which looks fine there. And I'll set my position keyframe. Go back. Set where I want it to come from. I always animate this backwards, so I set my first one at my ending point, and then I go back and find my starting point, which will be slid in like this. Easy ease these keyframes. It's a little bit long. I probably need to shorten this up just a tad. And I'll scrub to where I want this to start coming in, which is right when this stops. Okay, so let's try that. How does that look? Let me preview that, hitting 0 on the number pad. Okay, sweet, looks good. Right, not too shabby. I can slow that down just a little bit. Not too bad. So that's how track mats work. Really useful. They make masking things much easier and kind of matting out certain areas of a comp. Really quick, let's talk about using the luma mat. And actually, I'm going to bring in for my example, I've got a little circle here that I animated just using 2 shape layers. Right, here's my little circle animation. Just a little extra piece of, you know, coolness. I'm going to pre-comp this just so we have it as one solid comp. So Control Shift C, and we'll do circle pre-comp. Okay, so we have it all as one pre-comp now, right? So when I created this, I'm gonna dive in here so you can see the layers. It's just a transparent background, which is fine, and it's just a black circle and a white circle, right? So when you look at this on a black, it looks like it's just like one little piece, but really this is two circles, a white and a black. Luma Matte looks at only a white piece of a layer, right? So if I brought this into another comp, you wouldn't see the black. It would essentially matte out this black piece, right? So I'm going to grab this pre-comp, which is right here, circle pre-comp. Let me bring this over to my Ubuntu stuff, and we'll throw it in and see what happens. If I bring this over, we have it as, you can see, pretty much both the white and the black, right? So using what we know about our alpha matte, how can we make this work for us in a way that would make sense for this? And it's kind of hard to explain until you see it, but I'm going to create a new solid, and I'm going to match the color to like this orange. Okay, I'm going to put my circle pre-comp on top of it, and I want to tell this orange solid to luma matte the top of it. So it's going to cut out, essentially going to use this white section. So if I set this to luma matte, now that white section, it's essentially like a little stencils out to my orange solid here, right? So now I have, if I use this guy, now I have this nice little piece to whatever I want to use it for, right? It's kind of cool. So when you're designing icons and stuff like that, if you want to use black to cut out a certain section of it, like if you remember when we did our, let me see if I can find this. Let's see if I can find this here. I want to show you guys. Let's open this. I want to show you the phone stuff we did, which I think was week 3, maybe. Yeah, okay, so if you remember the phone stuff we did, this phone animation, we created it in white and black only. Well, if we want a background on this, it makes it awfully hard, right? If I take this as my background and if I want to do like a ramp background, that's not looking good, right? So let's say I want this to be a green background. I'll set my ramp, set my colors, set my points here, set this to radial. Okay, let's say this is what I want my background to be, but I don't want to see this black part of my phone, right? That's not a good look. It doesn't look good. So I'm going to grab the pieces of my phone. These are all the pieces of my phone. Pre-comp it to phone, right? And now if I create a new solid that's just white, because I just want the pieces to be white. I would just want to cut out this black. I'll bring that below my phone. I'll use the phone as the stencil. So when I set this, it'll look at the layer above it. So I'll go to Luma Matte, phone. Now I have this really cool thing, right? All that black goes away. If I wanted to move this phone, keep in mind though that I don't want to move my solid. This is just my color layer essentially. So you can almost just lock that down. So now when I grab my phone, it's a nice like stenciled phone, right? Looks pretty cool. If I wanted to change that color, I would just change the color of this solid. So hitting Control-Shift-Y will bring up solid settings of a layer of a new solid, or you can go to Layer, Solid Settings right here, and you can set this to whatever you want it to be. So if I want this to be like a darker green, I could do that, right? Pretty cool. A really good use of Luma Matte. So that's most of the stuff for today. Play around with masks. It comes in handy, man. If you can use a pen tool well and you know how to mask things out and you can kind of easily cut things out like that, you can do some really cool stuff quickly. So play around with that, and I'll upload a pen tool tutorial if you guys are having trouble using the pen tool as well. So good luck, have fun, and we'll see you guys next time.